Hey everybody, I'm out here in the shop getting ready for bow season, working on the Simmons Super Short Magnum. But anyway, we'll talk about that on another video, hopefully the one with me running it through a deer. But right now what I want to talk about is the most important thing that I probably ever shared with you, especially those just getting into shooting trad bows and also some of you that's been shooting for 40 years like myself. The number one most important thing in shooting a traditional bow is shooting the finish. Your whole mindset, your whole thought process during the shot should be, the goal should be shoot the finish. Not arrow groups, not good flying arrows, not broadheads that shoot with field points, not any of that. Your focus for probably the first 2 years of shooting should be shooting the finish, 100% shooting to the finish. And a lot of people call that a follow through. Now when we talk about shooting the finish, finishing the shot, focusing strictly on that, a lot of your other problems will go away. And when I was talking about shooting the finish, I'm not talking about coming back here and shooting the shot and then finishing back here, an additional movement. I'm talking about the follow through. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction type follow through. The same energy it takes to pull that bow back and send a 600 grain arrow at 180 feet per second toward the target should be able to send your 10 or 15, 20 pound arm, whatever it is, backwards at probably 35 feet a second. The same energy going that way should be going that way. It's a stabilizing force. You'll shoot more accurately that way. When the same energy leaves this way, the same energy should go back, and it stabilizes everything. It makes you shoot better. It makes you have back tension. The whole mindset thinking about shooting the finish, you got to be pulling through the shot. And you got to be relaxing your fingers, and everything just happens natural. And if you do that, what you're going to find is a lot of these things that people talk about today, and I see it all the time. I've been shooting a trad bow 2 weeks. I can't get my bare shafts to shoot with my fletched arrows. I mean, I want to just pull my hair out. It's just stupid to be moving to that step. And so soon, you should be the first couple of years, or at least the first year, all you should think about is shooting the finish. And a lot of those other problems will go away. You'll be like me. I never bare shaft tune. I don't find any need with it because I know when I cut that arrow loose clean, that the arrow is going to go straight the other way. I mean, it helps you shoot better. Now that doesn't mean you're going to have to eventually find an arrow, or an arrow is going to eventually find you, that's what I like to say. The right arrow will find you. Now that doesn't mean you can't experiment with different arrows and see, but your focus, once your focus gets on getting an arrow that shoots straight, then your focus is going to go away from the follow through and you're going to start having problems. So you really should never really even focus about having a good tuned arrow. A good tuned arrow will come to you. If you shoot enough different arrows, a good tuned arrow will come to you eventually. You can't help but see the arrow out of your peripheral vision as you're looking at the target. You can't help but see the arrow going. And if you're shooting, you got a good follow through, you're shooting to the finish every time, a good shooting arrow is going to find you. Now, what I find really important in the effort to be able to focus totally on the finish is to have an arrow that I can't see. And what I mean by that, I'll have a black target with black fletchings, a black arrow, and a black nock. And it's very hard to see that arrow. And if you shoot in low light conditions, it's impossible to see that arrow. So what that does is get rid of any performance-based shooting. You're not thinking about performance. All you're thinking about is shooting that perfect shot all the way to the finish. And your hand, depending on where you anchor. If you anchor under the chin like they do in the Olympics, a lot of them will end up behind your neck. If you anchor up high, you may end up right behind your ear. But your hand won't be flying out, because flying out means you released back tension. You're not focusing on the finish. You're focusing on something else, and you do like that, and you give it a little punch, and your hand flies out. And I've seen a lot of people make excuses for that. Oh, I got a big bicep, my hands got bull crap. If you're tucked into your face and your shoulder rotates back, your hand's going to slide down the side of your face and back behind your neck. It can't help but end up there. Now, and that's what you should do. You should focus on the finish, and if you do that, you'll be a better shot. And that's in any situation. If you're shooting some kind of a trick shot, or you're shooting an animal, or you're shooting 3D or whatever, your whole mindset, once those thoughts gets in your head, well, I'm shooting through got to shoot over a limb, blah, 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 and you get to thinking about that, the focusing on the finish goes away. So that's the reason you need to start early. You need to start, when you first start bow hunting or first start shooting a bow, shoot a whole year with nothing but focusing on the finish. Don't worry about arrow flight. Don't worry about any of that kind of stuff. Focus on the finish and build that into your brain, build that into your shot cycle so hard that you can't help but succeed. And you'll see a lot of these guys on the Olympics, and they'll do routines where they're following through, where they're focusing on the finish, and that's what they do. Just a little practice, without firing the bow, they'll hold the bow up and they'll do this, and then they'll make their shot. That's what they're doing. They're getting their mind back to, hey, I didn't focus on the finish on that last one, I need to do it on this one. And it's just amazing how that makes the arrows just go. You got a big old target, you haven't got any dot on it or anything, you're just shooting at a huge target, and you're out there shooting maybe 3 arrows. I don't like to shoot but one at a time, but you're out there doing it, and all you're focusing on, you're not aiming, you're not doing anything, you're just looking, and boom, the hand flies back. And the next thing you know, if you're shooting 2 or 3 arrows, the fletching will all be touching on them. And you're not even trying. I mean, that's just the way it works. When you shoot perfect back here, all the rest will come into place when you start, picking a naming method. And that's the reason so many people are shooting 3 under and shooting some kind of gap shoot method. The reason is, it's because they didn't start off focusing on the finish. They wasn't getting groups. And now that aiming method gives them something to think about, and they're able to execute the shot. So not focusing on the finish causes you have to change and constantly do different things, like adding a clicker, all this stuff. If you focus on the finish, you'll never have to add a clicker. You'll just be pulling through the shot, and your goal is your hand to recoil back right there at the shot, and the arrow will go straight. Now, I will say this, when I add to this, if you've been shooting a long time, like me, and you've been shooting wrong a long time like me, it's like the old saying, you got rocks, big rocks, little rocks, and sand, you got to get them all in a bucket. And if you put the sand in the bucket first, you won't get the big rocks in. So some of you need to just completely empty out your bucket. Start all over and start with this one thing. When you walk out there, get up to the target and start focusing on the finish. And you might have to get close to start with. Get real close. You might have to close your eyes, load up. But if you got anything like target panic or anything where you're doing that jittery stuff like me, then you do a lot better if eventually you start opening your eyes. You gotta break this with your eyes open, because that's what's going to get you. And you just want to focus on pulling through the shot. And right here, don't worry about where the arrows hit. They'll start hitting tighter when you start doing things righter. Now, I can't really think of anything to add to this other than that's the number one thing with what's going through your head during the shot. Is all these different thoughts start coming in. There don't need to be but one thought. You need to be loading up and focusing on finishing, and all the rest will take care of itself. That's the number one most important thing in shooting a bow, especially under high pressure situations. Get all those thoughts out of your head and focus on the finish, and that'll take care of you for the rest of your career.